things that you do it.
I do some things right.
Okay, so this is expensive compared to .com domains. Your first domain on .mls will cost $2,300 per year, $1,300 per year if you have under 1,500 subscribers. So I presume there are some of you here who might have a smaller number of subscribers. The second and subsequent names, if you want to register more than one, and most of our members so far have claimed more than one, the second and subsequent ones are $800 per year. So that larger number, that $2,300, that includes your annual dues, because there are dues to belong to the association, and that gives your organization a say in what the policies are for using .mls domain names. But the claim for the domains themselves is actually $800 a piece a year. That's an estimate right now. We're hoping it will be lower, and the more that we have, the lower we can make it. But that's a sort of pessimistic estimate. If we just barely managed, they would be $800 a year. This advanced now. The next one, mine or yours?
It's yours, but it's the most frequently asked question that I've had so far in talking through this concept with many people at this show, which is, what are we going to do about state domain names?
California.mls, maybe?
Hawaii.mls. I've got 3 islands in the audience, all wanting Hawaii.mls.
Well, you can't have it yet. What the board of directors of the association decided was that state name second-level domains, which is what those would be, are really important, because the goal here really is to make sure the consumer finds their way to accurate listing information. So if you gave, California.mls to the, Eastern Tiny Fragment of the Desert Association of Realtors, let's say, you're going to have a place where consumers don't find what they expect. So the board has approved allowing state name second-level domains, but they've also said we need to develop some policies to make sure that groups of MLS can claim those together. That there's a process to review those applications to make sure that what the consumer finds at Minnesota.mls or Illinois.mls is actually something that's representative of the state, not just one MLS that happened to get there earlier than the others and claim it.
That's pretty much our show. What do you do next? You can ask questions now in our time remaining until Russ says get off the stage. We'd be happy to take them. Stop by the booth, get more information, or look for someone who has a silver MLS Domains Association badge on. They are people who can answer your questions. And I've got.
I thought these were orange.
Huh?
I think they're orange.
Well, my orange is take back.
Back.
A silver name badge, which you're not wearing it, Brian. And my first question is in the back of the room, yes, sir.
Yes, hi, Fred Meyer from Massachusetts MLS Man. I think the problem that a lot of us have in envisioning this is that without realizing it, we're stuck in the Google era. And it may be that in 6 months to a couple of years we'll move beyond that. An example of what I mean, you want a hotel room in Chicago, right now you go to Google, you type in hotels in Chicago, you'll be pulled up either to a local site or hotels.com or something like that. So it's a 2-step process. Google, and then you click again on another site that's brought up. I predict that 6 months to a couple of years from now, people will do chicago.hotels or hotels.chicago. That's one step, and that aggravator will jump way ahead. And in thinking about this, I have a little bit of Google stock in my retirement plan, and I'm going to sell it. I think this is a fabulous opportunity, because anything, you want chairs like what are on the stage, you type chicago.furniture or furniture.chicago. We can't buy .chicago, but we can buy .mls. And that's not one domain name, it's the potential for thousands of them. So I'm 100% with you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that support. Question over the back.
Gentlemen, Cameron Payne from the Connecticut Statewide MLS. I have some concerns, but before I go into this, I just wanted to say thank you to both of you and everyone who's been involved in this. Clearly, this is a difficult issue, and a lot of time, thought, and energy has gone into this. So thank you, because clearly you're working on behalf of the industry. My concerns are these. I believe that in order for this to work, we have to retrain the public to search a .mls environment rather than a .com environment. That's asking a lot. That's really asking a lot. But that's really not my main concern. assumption that this may not work. But if it does work, my concern is that we, as an industry, will have pulled a coup d'etat on our brokers. Our brokers are not allowed to own a domain name in the .MLS environment. That's a real problem. We're not going to enjoy that from us. Now, what I do understand is that there's been discussion about brokers being able to have a subdomain, a /Century21 or whatever it may be, but that still doesn't work because the brokers have spent millions and millions of dollars branding themselves in the .com environment. They're going to have to continue to do that or abandon it completely if you have a link from there to the .MLS. I see that as a very, very serious concern.
Well, I'd like to try to address both of those, actually. The first one, the retraining one, I think is probably less of a problem than you might imagine. And one of the earlier commenters who raised this question about Google, in part put their finger on it, because consumers don't search .com, okay? You just know there's going to be a .com there because there's a .com everywhere. The .com is meaningless. But in an environment where there are top-level domains that have semantic value, that actually have meaning, the search engines are going to recognize that. So if you search Chicago homes, for instance, what's going to happen is that Google is going to recognize that Chicago.MLS has got a better set of resources for that than Chicago.com. Because there's semantic value in that. Similarly, there's going to be applications for .law, .med, any kind of profession you can think of. If you search Brian Larson attorney, you're going to find brianlarson.law a lot faster than you're going to find brianlarson.com because the search engines have to recognize the semantic nature of those new top-level domains. Not all of them, but many of them will have a semantic nature. And in terms of how you address your relationship with your brokers, we believe that MLSs will make that decision correctly. So some MLSs have talked about setting up their .MLS website as basically being a referral site out to the consumer, or to the broker, an opportunity to say to the consumer, if you want good information, the best place to get it is a real estate broker. And oh, by the way, here's a list of our brokers' IDX websites. And maybe you randomly generate it. I don't know how you actually generate the list. We've talked about lots of options. But the point is you point the consumer out to the broker, and at the same time you educate the consumer about the fact that the broker is the best source of real estate information in your market. So I think we've addressed those concerns. Clearly there's room for differences of opinion, but I think we've addressed those concerns.
And just to comment on the tail end of that, one of the questions we get very frequently is, for those multiple listing services that do not operate a public website that shows listing information, what are you going to do with a .MLS domain? Well, I run an MLS that does not have a public site that shows listing information. So that kind of a decision then is going to be a very localized decision. What will the Arizona Regional .MLS website do? I'm not sure we've determined that yet. It could very well be what Brian said, a referral out to the brokers. But if our brokers tell us we don't even want you referring business to us, then we would not do that. We could provide general real estate information. We could provide members-only information. But the concept of making it a public site that is searchable and retrievable under .MLS kind of flies against that. But I think those are all local questions that need to be considered locally. There's also the extended domain name issue. If we have Arizona Regional .MLS, or let's even get more localized, Phoenix.MLS, Scottsdale.MLS, Mesa.MLS, we could prepend a street address for every property within the confines of that city, so that 123 Main Street Scottsdale.MLS is one property, and 123 Main Street Gilbert.MLS is a different property. And as you know now, if you register a specific property address, the person who registers it in Peoria blocks the person from Miami from getting that same street address or any other street address that's similar in the entire country. We could now localize that, convert that to a member service if need be, or if we wanted to, and make that a very beneficial link for the public to get to specific information about a listing without getting in the way of the relationship between the broker and the consumer. I think that's an option that many MLSs will pursue.
In fact, I think one of our founders suggested they wanted to have those websites exist at the beginning. So there's a website for every property in the marketplace. The consumer in the marketplace would know, well, if I see a property sitting at 456 Elm Street, I can just type 456 Elm Street St. Paul.MLS. and pull up a public record if the property is not for sale, and pull up a listing broker's webpage if the property is for sale. And that would not, the technology to do that is actually trivial.
So there are many options here, and I think the local determination is going to decide what's good for your market. But in any event, you're going to need to have that domain to make those decisions. Yes, sir.
Joseph Coleman with the Charleston Triton Association. How do you deal with two cities that have the same name in different locations?
Go to our website.
Actually, the first city to claim a domain gets the domain. This is just like the internet. So if there's actually a Phoenix in, we figured out there are Phoenixes in 12 states.
Yeah, there's at least 5 or 6 other Phoenixes, all very small cities, and probably the chance of one of them applying as the Phoenix.MLS is very small, but it could happen, in which case there is contention. And in our policies, there is a whole process for addressing that, and I would urge you to go to the site and pull that policy.
And in some cases, so for instance, there's a Jacksonville, Ohio. In a case like that, if you were an MLS in that town, you might actually want to append the OH and say Jacksonville OH.MLS, because most consumers looking for Jacksonville.MLS nationally might really be looking for the one in Florida. That's a much bigger city and a bigger name market. I don't know if that's true, but that is a strategy that you could use if you were looking to find a valuable name that's relevant to your local market. And I think Russ.
I'm seeing the hook on the side. If you have more questions, please stop by the book.
Great.